The air in the royal great hall felt like ice. I stood in the shadows, my fingers raw from scrubbing the stone floors, trying to blend into the velvet curtains. I was nothing, an omega with a broken wolf and a name that meant servant. To the royal pack of Blackwood, Montana, I was just a ghost in a gray uniform. "Bring in the next one," the Lycan King, Silas Vane, barked. His voice was like grinding mountain rocks. The heavy oak doors swung open. Lady Genevieve stepped in, her fur coat trailing behind her. She was a high-blood alpha, beautiful and cruel. She was the 30th woman to try today. They weren't here to be wives. They were here to be a mother to the most important child in the world. And there he was, 6-year-old Toby, the prince of the Lycans. Toby sat on a small throne of carved bone. He looked tiny. His face was pale, his eyes dark and hollow. He hadn't spoken a word since the queen died 2 years ago. He hadn't shifted. He hadn't even smiled. He was the heir to the strongest bloodline in the United States, and he was fading away. "Hello, little prince," Genevieve purred. She reached out a hand covered in diamonds. "I brought you a gift. A golden dagger from the Northern Territories." Toby didn't even look at the blade. He looked at her hand. Then, he did what he did to every noblewoman who touched him. He growled. A deep, guttural sound that shouldn't come from a child. "Toby," King Silas warned. Genevieve ignored the warning and tried to pat his head. "Don't be difficult, darling. I'm going to be your Luna. You'll learn to love. Ciarac." Toby didn't just growl this time. He lunged. He bit Genevieve's hand so hard the bones snapped. The hall erupted in chaos. Genevieve screamed, falling back into her guards. The king stood up, his alpha aura exploding through the room, making all of us omegas drop to our knees in terror. "Enough," Silas roared. "Take him to his rooms. Lock him in." The guards moved, but Toby was faster. He was a blur of movement. He didn't run for the door. He didn't run for his father. He ran straight toward the back of the hall. He ran toward the shadows. He ran toward me. I froze. I was just holding a bucket of dirty water. I was nobody. But suddenly, the Prince of the Lycans was slamming into my knees, his small arms wrapping around my waist, so tight I couldn't breathe. The room went dead silent. The king stepped down from his throne, his heavy boots echoing like thunder. "Step away from the servant, Toby," Silas commanded, his eyes glowing a dangerous gold. Toby didn't move. He buried his face in my cheap, soap-scented apron. He took a deep, shuddering breath, and for the first time in 2 years, the prince spoke. His voice was a tiny, broken whisper that shattered the silence of the court. "Mom, I found you. Don't let them take me, Mom." My heart stopped. I looked up and met the king's eyes. He looked like he wanted to kill me. The council was gasping. The noble women were whispering thief and witch. I was just an omega. I had no power. I had no status. But in that moment, as Toby sobbed into my chest, I knew my life was over. Or maybe it was just beginning. Before we continue with the rest of the story, I want to hear from you. Comment down below where you are watching from today and what the weather is like in your part of the world. Also, if you want to see if an omega can truly become a queen, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a single chapter of this journey. The silence that followed Toby's words wasn't just quiet, it was heavy. It felt like the roof of the castle was about to cave in. Every alpha in that room was staring at me. I could feel their judgment like physical heat on my skin. It was June. Just June. I had been found on the edge of the Packlands when I was 16, starving and alone. They took me in because they needed someone to clean the grates and carry the wood. I was an omega, without a scent. In the werewolf world, if you don't have a scent, you don't have a soul. You're a defect. And yet, the royal heir was clinging to me like I was his entire world. "Let him go," King Silas said. He was standing right in front of me now. He was massive, 7 feet of pure muscle and intimidation. He smelled like pine needles and old blood. I can't, sire, I whispered, my voice trembling. He won't let go. It was true. Toby's fingers were hooked into the fabric of my uniform. If I pulled away, I would tear the cloth. Silas reached down. His large hand grabbed Toby's shoulder to pull him away. The moment he touched the boy, Toby let out a scream of pure agony. It wasn't a tantrum. It sounded like he was being burned alive. Silas recoiled, his face flashing with a rare moment of fear. What is this? He's rejected the bond. An old voice spoke up. It was Elder Vance, the head of the Lycan Council. He walked forward, leaning on a cane tipped with silver. He has rejected the royal bloodline's choice. He has formed an instinctive anchor with this. He pointed his cane at me. His lip curled in disgust. She is an Omega, Genevieve hissed, clutching her bleeding hand. She's a gutter wolf. She probably used some foul herb to trick him. Look at her. She doesn't even have a rank. I didn't do anything, I said, finally finding a spark of courage. I looked down at Toby. He was shaking. His eyes were closed, and he was humming a low, flat note. It was a self-soothing sound. He's just scared. You're all so loud. You're scaring him. The king's eyes narrowed. You are telling the king of the north how to handle his son? I'm telling a father how to handle a child, I snapped. The entire room gasped. You didn't talk to Silas Vane that way. You didn't talk to a Lucan king like he was just a man. But I was tired. I worked 18 hours a day. I slept in a room with a leaky ceiling. And right now a little boy was crying on me. Silas looked at Toby, then back at me. I saw the conflict in his eyes. He hated me. He hated that I was the one his son chose. But he loved his son more than he hated his pride. Take him to the nursery, Silas ordered. The guard stepped forward, but Silas held up a hand. No. She takes him. If anyone else touches him, and he screams again, I'll have your heads. He looked at me, his gaze cold enough to freeze my blood. Follow me, Omega. If you try to run, if you try to take him, I will hunt you to the ends of the earth. The walk to the royal wing was long. I had to carry Toby. He was heavy, but I didn't mind. He felt warm. He felt like he belonged in my arms. As we walked through the golden hallways, past paintings of fierce kings and beautiful Lunas, I felt like a stain on a white dress. I didn't belong here. The nursery was a huge room filled with toys that looked like they had never been touched. There was a bed shaped like a ship and books bound in leather. It was a room for a prince, but it felt like a prison. I sat on the edge of the bed, and Toby finally let go of my waist. He crawled into my lap and looked up at me. His eyes were a startling blue, the same color as the king's. Are you my mom? He asked. His voice was so small. My heart broke. I knew the story. Queen Elena had died giving birth to him. He had never felt a mother's touch. He had only known the cold, hard training of the Lycan guards. No, sweetie, I said softly. I'm June. I just work here. No, Toby said firmly. He leaned in and sniffed my neck. You smell like the stars. My mom is in the stars. You're her. Behind me, I heard a heavy thud. King Silas was standing in the doorway, watching us. He looked haunted. He hasn't spoken that many words in a year, Silas said. He walked into the room and sat in a chair across from us. He looked out of place in a nursery. He was a warrior, not a caretaker. Why you? You have no scent. I can't smell a thing on you. Maybe that's why, I said. Everyone else smells like power. They smell like ambition. They smell like they want to take something from him. I don't want anything. I'm just quiet. Silas leaned forward. The council wants you dead. They think you're a spy or a witch. According to the bloodline law, only a high-blood alpha can raise the heir. An Omega mother is a threat to the throne. It makes the bloodline look weak. Then let me go, I said. Tell him I'm gone. I can't, Silas growled. The doctor said his wolf is failing. He's starving himself. If you leave, he will die. And if he dies, the pack falls into civil war. He stood up and walked toward me. He stopped just inches away. I had to crane my neck to see him. For now, you stay. You will eat with him. You will sleep in the servant's alcove next to this room. You will be his mom until I can find a way to break this bond. He reached out and gripped my chin, forcing me to look at him. But don't get comfortable, June. You are a tool. Nothing more. Do not forget your place. He let go and stormed out. Toby looked at me, his little hand reaching up to touch my cheek. Don't listen to him, Toby whispered. He's just grumpy because he's lonely. I looked around the giant, lonely room. I was a prisoner in a golden cage, held there by the love of a child and the hate of a king. I didn't know how I was going to survive the night. The first night in the palace wing was a blur of fear. I didn't sleep in the alcove. Toby wouldn't let me. Every time I tried to stand up, he would wake up screaming, his little body shaking with a terror I didn't understand. In the end, I curled up on the rug beside his bed. It was a plush, expensive rug, softer than any bed I'd ever had, but I felt like I was sleeping on a bed of nails. I was waiting for the door to burst open. I was waiting for the council to come and drag me away. When morning came, a tray of food was left outside the door. It was incredibly fresh fruit, eggs, bacon, and bread that was still warm. I hadn't eaten a meal like this in years. Usually, I got the scraps from the kitchen after the alphas were done. Mom, eat, Toby said, pushing a piece of melon toward me. Toby, you have to eat first, I said. We sat on the floor together, eating. For a moment, I forgot I was in a palace. I forgot that the king was probably watching us through some hidden camera. I just felt like a person. But the peace didn't last. A knock came at the door. It wasn't a soft knock. It was a command. The door opened, and a woman stepped in. It wasn't Genevieve. This woman was older, her hair pulled back in a tight, silver bun. She wore a dress of dark purple that rustled when she moved. I am High Governess Martha, she said, her eyes scanning me with pure hatred. I am here to begin the prince's lessons. You will sit in the corner and remain silent. Toby shrank back behind me. I don't want lessons. I want to play. Lycans do not play, little prince, Martha said coldly. Lycans prepare. Now, sit at your desk. For the next 3 hours, it was torture. Martha didn't teach. She barked. She made Toby recite the history of the Lycan Wars. If he stumbled on a word, she would rap her ruler against his desk. The sound made Toby flinch every time. I sat in the corner, my blood boiling. I saw Toby's spirit wilting. He was looking at me, his eyes pleading for help. He's 6, I said, finally unable to stay quiet. Martha froze. She turned to me, her face twisting. What did you say, servant? He's 6 years old, I said, standing up. He shouldn't be memorizing death tolls. He should be learning how to be kind. He should be learning how to be a leader, not a soldier. You know nothing about leadership, Martha shrieked. You are an omega. You are the dirt beneath our paws. You are here to keep him quiet, not to speak. She turned back to Toby and slammed the ruler down. Again, the Battle of Red Creek. Who was the commanding general? Toby started to cry. Thick, silent tears. I don't know, he sobbed. Martha raised the ruler again. She didn't aim for the desk this time. She aimed for Toby's hand. I didn't think so. I didn't plan. I was across the room in a second. I caught the ruler in midair. Don't you touch him, I hissed. My wolf, the tiny, broken thing inside me, suddenly let out a snarl. It wasn't loud, but it was there. You dare? Martha gasped. Out. A voice boomed from the doorway. King Silas was there. He looked furious. Martha immediately dropped her head. Alpha, this girl is interfering with the prince's education. She is a bad influence. She is making him soft. Silas walked into the room. He didn't look at Martha. He looked at me. I was still holding the ruler. My knuckles were white. Martha, leave, Silas said. But sire. Leave. Martha scrambled out of the room, her purple dress rustling like a dying bird. Silas walked up to me. He took the ruler from my hand and snapped it in two like it was a twig. You have a lot of opinions for someone who cleans toilets, he said. I know what it's like to be hit, I said, my voice steady even though my heart was racing. I know what it's like to be told I'm nothing. I won't let it happen to him. Silas looked at Toby, who had crawled under his desk. The king sighed. It was a heavy, exhausted sound. The council thinks I'm weak for keeping you here. Genevieve is telling everyone that I've lost my mind. My boarders are being pushed by the Shadow Pack because they think the king is distracted by a servant. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over me. I need him to be strong, June. I need him to be a king. He will be, I said. But he has to be a boy first. Let me take him to the gardens. Let him see the sun. He's been in this room for days. Silas stayed silent for a long time. I could see the gears turning. He was a man of war, but he was also a man who had lost his mate. He was lonely. I could see it in the way he stood. 1 hour, Silas said. But if he gets a single scratch on him, I will hold you responsible. I didn't wait for him to change his mind. I grabbed Toby's hand and ran. The gardens were beautiful. There were flowers I had never seen, and trees that were hundreds of years old. Toby ran through the grass, laughing. It was a beautiful sound. I sat on a stone bench, watching him. For a moment, I felt a strange sensation. A warmth in my chest. But then, I smelled it. Even though I was an omega without a scent, I could still smell trouble. It was the smell of expensive perfume and ozone. Genevieve was standing on the terrace, watching us. She wasn't alone. She was with 3 other noblewomen. They weren't looking at Toby. They were looking at me. And they weren't smiling. Genevieve held up her bandaged hand. She pointed a finger at me and whispered something to the others. I knew then that the nursery wasn't the dangerous part. The dangerous part was the court. And they were just getting started. The 1 hour in the garden felt like a dream, but when we walked back into the stone halls, the nightmare returned. Every servant we passed lowered their eyes, but the noble she-wolves did the opposite. They stared. They whispered. Their eyes were like sharp needles, stitching a target on my back. By the 3rd day, the routine had changed. King Silas didn't just visit, he stayed. He would sit in the corner of the nursery with a mountain of paperwork, his brow furrowed, his golden eyes occasionally shifting to watch Toby and me. Why do you tell him those stories? Silas asked suddenly. I was sitting on the floor, telling Toby a story about a little wolf who found a star in a puddle. Because stories give him a world where he isn't a weapon, sire, I said without looking up. He is a weapon, Silas grunted. He is a Lycan king. If he isn't a weapon, he's a target. He can be both, I replied softly. Even a sword needs a sheath to keep it from getting dull. Silas went silent. I felt his gaze linger on the back of my neck. For the first time, his aura didn't feel like a crushing weight. It felt warm, like a hearth fire on a winter night. The peace was broken by a soft knock. A young Omega girl, even younger than me, entered with a silver tray. She looked terrified. Alpha. Lady Genevieve sent a peace offering. The girl stammered. She said she acted out of pain the other day. She sent herbal tea for the prince and a sweet cake for the guest. She looked at me when she said guest, and I saw pity in her eyes. That was my first warning. Silas nodded. Leave it. Toby reached for the cake immediately. It was covered in pink frosting and smelled like strawberries. My stomach gave a loud growl. I hadn't eaten much that morning. Wait, Toby, I said, catching his wrist. Something felt wrong. It was too perfect. It is a peace offering, June, Silas said, his voice annoyed. Do not be paranoid. Sire, Lady Genevieve hates me, I said. She doesn't send cakes to people she wants to kill. I took a small piece of the cake. It looked delicious. I took a tiny bite. It tasted like heaven, sugar, and cream. I waited. 1 minute.
2.
Nothing happened. See, Silas said, standing up. You are jumping at shadows. I let Toby have a piece. He ate it happily, getting frosting on his nose. I ate the rest of my slice. But 10 minutes later, the world started to tilt. My heart began to hammer against my ribs like a trapped bird. My vision blurred, the golden lights of the nursery turning into long, burning streaks. I tried to stand, but my legs felt like water. June. Silas's voice sounded like it was underwater. I looked at Toby. He was fine. He was still playing with his wooden blocks. Then I realized the poison wasn't in the tea. It wasn't in the whole cake. It was only on the side they knew I would eat from. Toby, I gasped, reaching for him. I fell. My chin hit the edge of the table, and I tumbled to the rug. Mom, Toby screamed. I felt massive hands grab my shoulders. Silas was shouting for a healer. He pulled me against his chest, and even through the fog of the poison, I felt the vibration of his roar. If she dies, Silas screamed, his voice shaking the very foundations of the castle, I will burn the Northern Territory to ash. I tried to tell him I was okay, but my tongue felt like lead. The last thing I saw was the king's face. He didn't look like a king anymore. He looked like a man who was about to lose everything. I woke up in a room that smelled of death and dried flowers. It was the infirmary. My throat felt like I had swallowed broken glass, and my arm was bruised from where they had poked me with needles. She's awake, a soft voice said. I turned my head. It was Silas. He was sitting in a chair by my bed. He looked terrible. His shirt was wrinkled, his jaw was covered in dark stubble, and his eyes were bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. How long? I croaked. 2 days, Silas said. His voice was raw. It was silver shaving mixed with nightshade. A slow kill. If you were a high-blood alpha, you would have been sick for an hour. But for an omega... It was Genevieve, I said. I know, Silas said. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the arms of his chair. She is in the dungeons. Her father is begging for mercy. He won't get it. He stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the room. The council is furious, he continued. They say I am overreacting to servant. They say a king shouldn't cry over an omega. My heart skipped a beat. You cried? Silas didn't answer. He kept his back to me. Toby hasn't left your side until an hour ago. I had to force him to go eat. He thinks you're a ghost now.
I am sorry, you whispered.
Don't be, Silas said. He turned around, and the look in his eyes made me want to hide under the covers. It wasn't hate. It was something much more dangerous. It was hunger. The healer found something while they were cleaning the poison out of your blood, June. I froze. I had a secret I had kept since I was 16. They said your blood is strange. Silas stepped closer. They said you aren't an omega.
Not really.
They found traces of a royal suppression spell. Someone locked your wolf away when you were a child. They buried your scent so deep that even the moon goddess couldn't find you. I don't know what you're talking about. I lied, my voice trembling. Stop lying. Silas roared, slamming his hand against the bed frame. You smell like the stars, Toby said. I thought he was just a child being poetic. But today, as the poison left your body, the spell weakened. He leaned down, his face inches from mine. He took a deep breath, his nose brushing against the pulse point on my neck. I felt a jolt of electricity shoot through my body, a spark so bright it felt like a physical flame. You smell like winter jasmine and lightning, Silas whispered, his voice vibrating against my skin. You aren't a servant. You're a lost heir. That's why Toby chose you. He didn't find a nanny. He found his kin. I began to cry. The weight of the secret was too much. My father, he was the king of the Southern Pack. When the coup happened, my mother hid me. She put the spell on me so the usurpers wouldn't find me. She told me to be invisible. She told me that being an Omega was the only way to stay alive. Silas's expression softened. He reached out, his thumb brushing a tear away. You've been hiding in my kitchens while I searched the world for Luna, he murmured. The council wants bloodline purity? Well, you have the purest blood in the South. It doesn't matter, I sobbed. They'll still kill me. If the South finds out I'm alive, they'll go to war with you. Let them come, Silas growled. He leaned in, his lips almost touching mine. I have spent my life fighting for things I didn't care about. I think it's time I fought for something I do. Before he could kiss me, the door burst open. Alpha, the council has arrived, a guard shouted. They have the High Executioner with them. They say the Omega has bewitched the king and must be purged. Silas stood up, his wolf flashing in his eyes. He didn't look scared. He looked like he had been waiting for a reason to kill. Stay here, he told me. Toby is guarded by my best men. I'm going to remind the council who actually wears the crown. But as he left, I saw a shadow move in the corner of the room. It wasn't a guard. It was the High Governess Martha, and she was holding a silver dagger. The king is busy, little girl, she hissed. But I'm not. Martha moved faster than any old woman should. She wasn't just a governess. She was a zealot for the old ways, a believer that anything unpure should be wiped from the earth. The silver dagger in her hand hummed with a deadly light. You ruined everything, Martha hissed, her face contorting into a mask of rage. Toby was supposed to be a cold, hard king. He was supposed to belong to the council. But you made him human. You made him soft. I struggled to sit up, but the poison still felt like lead in my veins. I was weak, a sitting duck on a white hospital bed. He wasn't soft. I choked out. He was dying. Can't you see that? You were killing the boy you claimed to serve. Better dead and pure than alive and bonded to a servant. Martha lunged. I rolled off the bed, hitting the floor with a heavy thud. The silver blade sliced through the pillow where my head had been just a second before. I scrambled toward a tray of medical tools, my fingers closing around a heavy glass bottle of antiseptic. Martha turned, her eyes glowing a sickly, weak yellow. She was an alpha, even if she was old. Her power felt like a suffocating blanket. Nowhere to run, little ghost. She lunged again. As the blade came down, I didn't move away. I moved in. I slammed the glass bottle against the side of her head. It shattered, spraying alcohol and glass everywhere. Martha shrieked, clutching her face, the silver dagger clattering to the floor. I didn't wait. I grabbed the dagger. The silver burned my palm, a sign that my own wolf was trying to push through the suppression spell, but I held on. I crawled toward the door, my heart screaming. I didn't care about myself. I had to get to Toby. Outside in the hallway, the palace was in chaos. I could hear the sounds of fighting from the great hall, the deep, earth-shaking roars of Silas, and the clashing of steel. The council had brought their own enforcers. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a coup. I stumbled toward the nursery, my vision swimming. Every step was agony. Toby, I whispered. Toby, please be okay. I reached the nursery doors. The two guards Silas had left were lying on the floor, unconscious. The door was ajar. I pushed it open and saw him. Toby was standing on his bed, his small fists clenched. Standing over him was Elder Vance. The old man wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding a glowing stone, a nullifier. It was designed to drain the power of a Lycan, to keep them in a state of permanent weakness. You are the future of this pack, Vance was saying, his voice cold and dry. But you must be rebuilt. We will wipe the memory of that girl from your mind. We will make you what you were meant to be. Toby saw me in the doorway. Mom. Vance turned, his eyes widening as he saw me holding the silver dagger, my hospital gown stained with blood. You? You should be dead. Leave him alone, I growled. And for the first time in my life, I felt it. The suppression spell inside me didn't just crack, it shattered. A wave of heat exploded from my chest. My skin felt like it was peeling away to reveal something golden and fierce. I didn't shift into a wolf, but the power of one flooded my veins. My scent, hidden for 10 years, filled the room like a physical force lightning, jasmine, and the ancient, heavy smell of southern royalty. Vance stumbled back, dropping the nullifier stone. That scent, it's impossible. The southern line was extinguished.
Not all of us, I said.
My voice sounded deeper, vibrating with a command I didn't know I possessed.
Get away
From
my soul.
I didn't need the dagger. I lunged at Vance, the sheer force of my aura knocking the old man off his feet. He hit the wall and slumped down unconscious. Toby jumped from the bed and flew into my arms. I held him, sobbing, as the golden light around us began to fade. I was exhausted, but for the first time, I felt whole. I wasn't an Omega. I was a queen. The doors burst open. Silas charged in, his claws out, his chest covered in scratches. He stopped dead when he saw me. He sniffed the air, his eyes widening until they were almost entirely gold. June, he whispered. The council is dealt with, I said, leaning my head against Toby's hair. But Silas, I think I just declared war. The great hall was a mess of broken stone and groaning men. Silas's loyalists had won, but the victory felt hollow. The elders were in chains, and the pack was terrified. I stood at the top of the stairs, wearing a borrowed dress of deep crimson. I felt exposed. My scent was now out in the open, and every Lycan in the building could smell exactly who I was. I wasn't just a servant anymore. I was a political time bomb. Silas stood beside me, his hand resting firmly on the small of my back. He hadn't left my side since nursery. They are waiting for an explanation, Silas whispered to me. They want to know why a servant just released the aura of a southern high alpha. Tell them the truth, I said. Silas stepped forward, his voice booming through the hall. People of Blackwood, you were told that the southern royal line was dead. You were told that bloodline purity was the only way to survive. But the moon has hidden the truth from us. He gestured to me. This is June, daughter of King Alaric of the South. She is the last of her line. She was hidden among us as an Omega to survive a massacre. My son didn't choose a servant. He chose a queen. A murmur went through the crowd. It wasn't all positive. Fear was thick in the air. If she stays, the South will burn us. Someone shouted from the back. The usurpers will bring their armies to our borders. Silas growled, a sound that silenced the room instantly. Then let them come. Any pack that hunts a woman and a child is no ally of mine. If you want her gone, you have to go through me. He turned to me then, in front of everyone. He didn't care about the cameras or the noblewomen. He dropped to one knee. The king of the north, kneeling before a girl who had been scrubbing his floors a week ago. June, he said, his voice dropping to a register only I could hear. I didn't know I was looking for you. I thought I was looking for a mother for Toby, but I was looking for the other half of my soul. Will you stay? Not as a tool. Not as an Omega, but as my Luna? I looked down at him. I saw the man behind the crown, the lonely father, the weary warrior. I looked at Toby, who was standing by the throne, a huge smile on his face. Yes, I said. The roar that went up from the loyalists was deafening. But as Silas stood and pulled me into his arms, kissing me with a passion that made the world disappear, I saw a bird fly past the window. It was a black raven, the messenger of the southern usurpers.
They knew.
The weeks that followed were a blur of preparation. Silas spent every waking hour in the war room. I spent my time with Toby, but I was also training. My wolf was young and wild, having been suppressed for so long. Every day, I practiced shifting, feeling the bone-deep ache of the transformation. "You're doing well, Luna," Arthur, the head of security, said as I panted in the training yard. I had just managed to hold a partial shift for 10 minutes. "It's not fast enough," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "I can feel them, Arthur. The southern wolves. They're at the border." "We have the advantage of the terrain," Arthur reminded me. "Montana winters are brutal for southern wolves." That night, I went to find Silas. He was staring at a map, his face etched with worry. "They've sent an envoy," Silas said without turning around. "They don't want a war. They want a trade. Me for peace." I guessed. "They want you and Toby," Silas turned, his eyes burning. "They realize Toby carries your bloodline now through the instinctive bond. They want to use him as a puppet king for the South." "Never," I hissed. "I told them the only thing they would get from me was a grave," Silas said. He walked over and took my hands. "But June, the council members who escaped, they've joined them. They're telling the South all our secrets. Our tunnel systems, our weak points in the wall." "Then we don't fight from the walls," I said, a plan forming in my mind. "We fight like the ghosts they think we are." I pulled Silas toward the map. "They think I'm a weak girl who is hiding. They think Toby is a broken child. We use that." We spent the night planning. It was a gamble. We would let them into the outer courtyard. We would make them think we were surrendering. When morning broke, the horizon was black with wolves. Thousands of them. The usurper king, a cruel man named Malphas, rode at the front. Silas and I stood at the main gate. We were alone. "Hand them over," Malphas shouted, his voice amplified by magic. "And the rest of your pack lives." Silas looked at me. He squeezed my hand one last time. "Now," I whispered. I let out a howl. It wasn't a cry for help. It was a signal. From the snowy ground itself, hundreds of Blackwood wolves erupted. We hadn't been waiting behind the walls. We had been buried in the snow, masked by the scent-blocking herbs I used to use as a servant. The battle was a whirlwind of white and red. I shifted, a pure white wolf with golden eyes. I wasn't an Omega anymore. I was a predator. I found Malphas in the center of the chaos. He laughed when he saw me. "The little princess thinks she can bite?" He shifted into a massive, scarred black wolf. He was twice my size. But I had something he didn't. I had Toby. From the balcony above, Toby let out a high, piercing whistle. It was a frequency only a Lycan could hear, a power he had discovered during our play sessions. It didn't hurt our wolves, but for the southern wolves it was like a physical blow to the head. Malphas stumbled, his ears bleeding. I didn't hesitate. I lunged for his throat. It wasn't a long fight. With Malphas dead, the southern wolves, most of whom were only there out of fear, dropped to their knees. The war was over in an hour. Spring came early to Montana. The snow melted, revealing the green life beneath, much like the truth had been revealed in the palace. The coronation was a quiet affair. We didn't need the council or the noblewomen. We had the pack. I stood on the balcony where I had once scrubbed the floors. I was wearing a crown of silver and jasmine. Silas stood beside me, and Toby sat on his father's shoulders, waving at the crowd. "You did it," Silas whispered, kissing my temple. "We did it," I corrected. The South was being rebuilt. Without Malphas, the people had called for a fair leadership. We had established a dual-pact treaty. Toby would one day inherit both, uniting the North and South for the first time in history. But more importantly, the palace was no longer silent. There was laughter in the hallways. The servants were treated with respect, and the Highbloods had learned that rank meant nothing without heart. That night, after the feast, I found Toby in the nursery. He was sitting by the window, looking at the stars. "Mom," he asked. "Yes, Toby? Is the story true? About the star in the puddle?" I sat beside him and pulled him into my lap.
Yes.
Sometimes the brightest things in the world are hidden in the dirtiest places. You just have to be brave enough to look. He hugged me tight. "I'm glad I looked at you." Silas appeared in the doorway, watching us with a look of pure, unadulterated love. He walked over and wrapped his arms around both of us. We weren't just a king, a queen, and an heir. We were a family. And in the world of the Lycans, that was the greatest power of all. Years later, people still talk about the Omega Queen. They talk about the woman who changed the laws of bloodlines and proved that an instinctive bond is stronger than any political decree. Toby grew up to be a king like no other, wise, kind, and fiercely protective of the weak. And Silas? He never let me scrub another floor, though sometimes, just to tease him, I'd pick up a broom. He'd usually take it from my hand and carry me off to the gardens instead. We lived a life full of light, a far cry from the cold, formal halls I first entered. We proved that love doesn't care about rank, and that sometimes a whisper of "Mom" is all it takes to shatter a kingdom and build a better one in its place. I hope you enjoyed this journey of love, justice, and the power of a hidden bond. I'd love to know, what part of the story did you find most intriguing? Was it the moment Toby chose June in the Great Hall, or the revelation of her secret Southern royal bloodline? And what did you think of Silas's change of heart? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to chat with you. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your subscription is a huge support, and it truly means the world to me, as this channel is still young and trying to grow. Thank you for being part of our pack, and I'll see you in the next interesting story.